All right, today is Wednesday, April 16th, and according to the NFL calendar, this is the deadline for NFL teams to time, test, visit, interview, or conduct any sort of physical examination with a draft eligible player at their club facility. So there's some reports around today. James Pierce, that comes from Ian Rappaport. Josh Simmons, that comes from Adam Schefter, that those two individuals are at the 49ers facility in Santa Clara on today, Wednesday, April 16th. So we have a list of names from various reports of individuals, players who have visited the 49ers. Each team is allowed to bring in 30 draft eligible players from outside the area. Of course, the 49ers had their local pro day last week, so they got a firsthand look and an opportunity to meet with some of the draft eligible players from Cal. A lot of really good defensive backs there. Stanford as well. So, but let's kind of focus in on what maybe it says about who the 49ers have brought in for visits. And a lot of times they there's smoke screens going on with the first round draft picks or the potential first round draft picks. As you know by now, the 49ers have the number 11 overall pick in this draft. All things being equal, you would think defensive line, but at number 11. They also, they have to, it's incumbent upon them to just select the best available player because this is a team with basically draft needs at every level of the team, except for maybe quarterback. And you could even see them taking a quarterback late in the draft or signing an undrafted rookie. So, what the 49ers have done in the past, generally speaking, with their first round draft pick, is it seems like they kind of know which direction they want to go, and the people they bring in for visits aren't necessarily the ones that they intend upon taking, but maybe they just want to get to know them. They want to do, maybe there's some questions, whether it's physical questions, whether it's character type of stuff. But let's take a look at some of the guys they brought in. And the reason I mention that is it just seems like there's so many times where the 49ers, they draft a guy in the first round and the player goes, I had no idea they were interested in me. I think that happened last year with Ricky Pearsall. I remember it happened with Mike McGlinchey a few years back. So that's kind of been their MO a little bit is they just don't want to set off those alarm bells that they're interested in the player that they end up taking. Now, it can also work uh, the other way too. Now that they've established that, now they might, it'd be difficult to tell the difference. Is this a smokescreen? Is this someone they're generally, genuinely interested in, or what the case may be? So now it starts the guessing game. So at 11, there are four players the 49ers have brought in that we know of. We don't know all top 30, all the 30 visits, but there are four players that the 49ers have visited with in Santa Clara who conceivably could be chosen at number 11 overall. And whichever order you want to put them in, they're all defensive linemen. Defensive tackle Walter Nolan from Ole Miss, defensive end James Pierce from Tennessee, and two other defensive ends, Shamar Stewart from Texas A&M and Michael Williams from Georgia. Now, would they take any of those? Would any of those be a player that you could see them taking? Absolutely. No question about it. And then, we could add in some other guys like Green from Marshall, Jalen Walker from Georgia, a guy who could play stack linebacker on base downs and rush the passer in nickel situations as a defensive end with Yetur Gross-Matos sliding inside. So there are a lot of areas the 49ers could do, but when you look at just the top 30 visits, boy, those defensive linemen really stand out. What other spots could they go? Yeah, they could go cornerback. I wouldn't necessarily expect that with some question marks about Will Johnson's health, his ability to come up and run support. Jahdae Barron from Texas, offensive lineman Will Campbell from LSU, Armand Membu from Missouri, and Texas's uh, Kelvin Banks. Now, if we're going to stay on the offensive lineman thing, they also brought in Josh Simmons for a visit. Now, Simmons is an ultra talented left tackle prospect, started his career at San Diego State, was having a very good year, very good season at Ohio State until he tore his patellar tendon and underwent surgery. And the 49ers, would they be scared off by a player who has gone through that? I would think so, but they certainly want to give him a good look because, as far as left tackles go, he might be about the guy that checks all the boxes. Will Campbell played a lot of good football in the SEC. He's got the arm issue, though. How long are those arms? Some teams might think that he sets up better at guard. But with Josh Simmons, I would think of him more if he's still there at 43, if teams are scared off with that knee condition. 49ers have had those issues in the past. They're currently going through it with Drake Jackson, and it really didn't sound too encouraging when John Lynch was talking about Drake Jackson and his recovery. I think if he is able to get back on the field, return to health, it would be kind of seen as found money at this point for Drake Jackson and the 49ers. So other players, Weston Richburg. Remember, that was 2018. 49ers paid a lot of money to bring in center Weston Richburg, and he played fairly well as a first year player with the team. And then the next year he was doing fairly well. And then in that game, I believe that was that crazy back and forth game in New Orleans. He sustained a torn patellar tendon in his knee and never got back on the field for the 49ers. So Josh Simmons, someone to keep an eye on with that 43rd overall pick for the 49ers in the second round. Two other guys that they brought in for visits who are potential there at 43 would be Darius Alexander from Toledo, a big defensive tackle, and also Tyleik Williams from Ohio State. So those are guys that could factor into that second round mix as far as players the 49ers would be interested in among those that they've had visit. Now, where it gets interesting, I think, is the third round. So we're talking third and fourth round. As the 49ers have this cluster of picks at 75, 100, 113, 138, 147. Then we can even jump up to 160 as well. And so in those early picks there, 75, 100, and 113, there are five legitimate candidates for those picks that the 49ers have brought in. And one of them is a tight end, Harold Fannin, and we'll talk more about the tight ends a little bit later. He's from Bowling Green. So he's seen as a very good prospect in this tight end heavy draft. I would fully expect the 49ers to select a tight end and somebody who maybe offers a little bit more than just the run blocking of Luke Farrell, who they signed in free agency. The other players the 49ers have brought in, it's basically one at every position. So it kind of gives you the idea that in that third, fourth round cluster, they can hit a lot of different positions. So Harold Fannin, tight end, Bowling Green, defensive tackle, Omar Norman Lott from Tennessee, a linebacker who could replace Dre Greenlaw, Chris Pooh Paul Jr. from Ole Miss. Also, a cornerback that, if you listen to the 49ers Talk podcast, this is somebody that Field Yates highlighted to be a nickelback, but kind of a ball hawking player in the secondary, Quincy Riley from Louisville. And then also a wide receiver, Kyle Williams of Washington State. And don't cringe when I say wide receiver Kyle Williams from Washington State. Don't want any flashbacks to the 49ers championship game loss to the Giants back in, what was that, 2011 season? So January of 2012. But anyway, those are four players: a tight end, a defensive tackle, a linebacker, a cornerback, and a wide receiver who could fit into that third round cluster. And then with the fifth and sixth round picks, we're talking, maybe even late fourth with the 138, and then in the fifth round at 147 and 160. Some options there for the 49ers. That includes two tight ends, uh, Jalen Conyers from Texas Tech and Jackson Haas from Georgia Tech. And then another cornerback, Colby Bryant from Kansas. Kobe Bryant from Kansas. So you can see the players that the 49ers have brought in, they're kind of casting a wide net, a lot of different positions, and that would only go to reason because 49ers do have needs at just about every place. I could see them at any point in the draft, I could see them taking basically any position in the draft except for kicker. I wouldn't think that they would do that or punter. But even that, I guess, wouldn't totally shock me when you know that Mitch Wishnowsky coming back off the knee injury from last season. He seems to be doing fairly well. And so we'll see what the 49ers do there as far as if they bring in any competition for Wishnowsky. They have already said they're going to be bringing in competition for Jake Moody at kicker. So, uh, but, quarterback later in the draft or free agency, if they do that at all. I think they have their three quarterbacks that they would be comfortable going with: Brock Purdy and Mac Jones and Tanner Mordecai. Running back, they do need more help there. Late round pick, I would think, or undrafted rookie. Again, a very good running back draft, a very good tight end draft. So more help for backup power for George Kittle and Luke Farrell. Luke Farrell, the blocking guy. Offensive line. Talked a lot about the offensive line in my last video, comparing it to how the Eagles have gone about building their offensive line. And kind of the surprise is that the 49ers and the Eagles have gone about it in very similar fashions. The difference is that the Eagles have connected on some offensive linemen and ended up signing them to long-term contracts, contract extensions, whereas the 49ers haven't really had that kind of success as far as, they've gotten starters out of the draft, but, a guy like Mike McGlinchey, Aaron Banks, Jalen Moore, when those guys reached free agency, the 49ers did not re-sign them. So, offensive line, certainly an area the 49ers will look to improve. Maybe it's in that fifth round mold as well. Logan Brown from Kansas is somebody that comes to mind. Charles Grant from William and Mary. Defensive line up and down the board. They're going to select at least two defensive linemen in this draft as they build more depth. Linebacker, that's an area. They have Fred Warner. They have D. Winters, they have Tatum Bethune, they have Curtis Robinson, but they need more competition, and a guy in that maybe third, fourth round range that can come in and compete for a starting job. And then the defensive backfield. Nickelback, talked a little bit about that with Field Yates. Check that out at NBCSportsBayArea.com. And then safety, they're fairly set at safety with Malik Mustafa and Jason Pinnock and Jair Brown, but certainly wouldn't surprise me if they were to get more of a free safety ball hawking type of player who can also initially contribute on special teams. So that's a look at some of the 49ers top 30 visits, what it means. It might mean nothing when you talk about those potential first round picks, or it could mean something because maybe the 49ers are like, okay, now we're becoming too predictable. People know that the people we bring in aren't candidates in that first round. But, when you look at some of the players that they have ended up selecting later in the draft, a lot of those guys they've brought in for visits. So it does kind of signal the potential of some of those names that I mentioned joining the 49ers at some point in next week's draft. Thanks for tuning into this video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave a like and a comment. And if you haven't already, subscribe. And that is it for now.